Alright, so this video is just to give you some questions to think about and some areas to look at when you're going through these documents. This would be for Station 4. So the first document, it says, look at the document on the middle ground and determine what Richard White meant by the phrase middle ground. So when you're reading this, he has it kind of set up in a body paragraph, and he has it set up kind of like you would in an essay, kind of. So this first paragraph is really just an introduction, giving you some sort of context as to what's happening here as he comes up with this term middle ground. I would look in the second paragraph. The second paragraph is really where you would find that information to determine what he meant by that phrase middle ground. And then we also, remember, we want to look at consequences as well, consequences of European exploration on the Americas. So it seems like this would be a consequence as to what happens to the Native Americans and their agency or their ability to act instead of being acted upon when more whites and more Europeans came to the continent. So the next part, you're asked to look at these documents, and you're asked to look at elements of conflict within these documents. You're also looking at some of the consequences of European domination and why the Europeans were able to eventually gain the upper hand. So once again, where do we see conflict between the Europeans and the natives, or potential areas of conflict? What do we see as a consequence for Europeans being able to dominate North America? And then you could also look for some elements here for why that would explain why the Europeans were able to gain the upper hand. For the first document, Nicholas V, Papal Bull, Romanus Pontifex, 1455. So this is actually coming before Columbus, before our unit starts in 1491. So a couple of things we have to know. A Papal Bull is like a charter, it's a charter by the Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church, and he's essentially given King Alfonso, who is a king of Portugal, his permission to rule over land. All right, and so this is a descriptive text. It describes what King Alfonso can do with the Pope's permission, and so I think you just need to look at this second line. So what is he given the King Alfonso the permission to do? He's given King Alfonso permission to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed. And so who would these pagans be in our narrative, in our story here for Unit 1? Who might these enemies of Christ be? If the Pope is giving King Alfonso permission to do this, would it be crazy to think that the enemies of Christ might be the Native Americans, right? And it's also saying that, you go on, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them would be the natives, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate himself and his successors the kingdoms, the dukedoms, so on and so forth. So it's pretty much the Pope has given King Alfonso, King of Portugal, so he's a European, given him permission to search out, capture, invade, and subdue all natives wherever he finds them, and take all their kingdoms, all their land, and all their goods, right? And reduce the Native Americans to essentially being their slaves. All right, and he goes on, it says, and convert them and their use and profit. And the other motive here for King Alfonso and Europeans, especially the Spanish, is that the Pope was going to want to convert them to Christianity. So we have to look at some aspects of that, especially with the Spanish coming over to the Americas. They're going for gold, and they're also going for God, trying to convert these Native Americans to Christians. The next one that we're going to look at is document 3, John Lawson, A New Voyage to Carolina in 1709. So a couple of things that we might want to look here. It seems like this is a cause and effect text structure. It's talking about the population. I guess the topic here is a population or the conditions of Native Americans. So looking at what has caused the Native American population to meet these conditions that he describes here in this text, and what are the effects of that condition. All right, so we want to look at what has happened to the Native Americans, why has it happened to them, and what are the results of that. Document 4, Bloody Brook Massacre, Deerfield, Massachusetts. I think we can think here. All right, so just the title, Bloody Brook Massacre. It seems like there's going to be a violent conflict in Massachusetts. So we know that this is one of two of the important colonies or settlements that we're going to look at in the first unit. We look at Jamestown, Virginia, and we look at Massachusetts Bay. So this is up north in New England. So 1675. I think in the first paragraph it talks about people moving along. This is a descriptive text structure. So who is moving along? Are these possibly the English moving along, or is this the natives? All right. So the first paragraph you're looking at who's moving, and then the second paragraph it says, meanwhile the whole hostile force. So who might have been the hostile force? Right? Were these the natives, or were these the Europeans? And then the last couple paragraphs, what was the end result? All right, what actually happened here in Deerfield, Massachusetts, and why do you think? Why do you think this has happened? What do you think has caused this event to occur? And once again, you want to go back to the and think about the relationship between the Native Americans and the Europeans. The last document that we look at, document number 6. I think this is a problem solution document. When you're looking at the title here, French Fur Trade in the Colony and the Problem of the Iroquois, I think one question here that you can ask is what can be assumed by the title of the source. It's definitely dealing with the French. It's definitely dealing with some aspect of their economy or to why they came to the Americas, and it seems like it's dealing with a consequence here. I would look at the first sentence here. So long as all the young men, all the way through the second line, right? So why are the French here? And in the author's point of view, what should they be doing instead, right? Is the real reason why they're here, is it actually working out for the French? Is that going to make the French see the benefits of coming to the Americas? Or does the author think that the French settlers should be spending their time and energy doing something else? I think some other things here that you might want to look at is right in here, find every possible means of restoring the trade with the savages, right, and of establishing it at Montreal. All right, this is Montreal, Canada, so as to keep all young men in the country and accustom them to work from early youth. And then he says, all right, so what's the Iroquois problem? He gets right in here. He talks about the Iroquois problem. So we want to look at that, and you want to ask yourself and be able to answer the question, why does the author want to get rid of the Iroquois? I hope that these questions here or this short video has kind of given you some insight as to what to look for with the documents. And as always, though, I need your best possible work. I need you to show evidence of being able to answer the question. I need you to be able to cite evidence. I need you to be able to explain why this evidence helps support your answer, and that way I can best help you out with any questions you might have.